There was a time when clone troopers were seen as true heroes, created in secret, trained for war, and loyal to the end. They became the backbone of the Republic's defense against the Separatist threat. On every planet, in every battle, Jedi and clones fought side by side, trusting each other with their lives. The bond between them was strong. Some Jedi called them brothers in arms, while others gave them minimal recognition but still used them as weapons. The Republic called them guardians of peace. And for a moment, peace seemed truly possible. With the Jedi scattered across the galaxy, the clones were not just soldiers. They were hope. Cities were saved, invasions were prevented, and entire systems were protected, all thanks to the courage and discipline of these warriors. Their presence gave the people a sense of security they hadn't felt in decades. The Jedi, once guardians of balance, now relied heavily on these men made for war. No one questioned it. The Jedi believed in the cause, and the clones never hesitated to obey. But one day Anakin did something unexpected. He asked to speak to the entire council, not just ObiWan and not just Palpatine. In the council chamber, he told them everything. His dreams, his fears, and above all, the new detail that shook him deeply. "I see Padme," he said slowly. "And this time, it's not someone else who kills her. It's me." Silence filled the room. Mace Windu frowned. Ki-Adi-Mundi lowered his eyes. And Yoda spoke calmly that everyone was aware that the Force was shaken in Skywalker. All the masters tried to give Anakin advice, but his confused mind couldn't understand. The more they spoke, the more distant Anakin became. The masters' words seemed empty, like echoes in a stone hall. They offered philosophy when he needed answers. He wanted action, path, a way to save her, but all he received were riddles. He left the room in silence, but something inside him had changed. The more they tried to guide him, the more alone he felt. And in that growing silence, fear began to grow like a shadow. Obi-Wan noticed. At first it was subtle. Anakin smiled less. He trained harder. He avoided his friends. One night, Obi-Wan discreetly visited Padme's apartment. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, something she couldn't hide. "He doesn't talk to me anymore," she said softly. "He spends hours staring out the window. He hardly sleeps." Obi-Wan put his hand on her shoulder. "I think he's afraid," he whispered, "but not of something outside, of himself." When Obi-Wan confronted Anakin, the reaction was explosive. "You don't understand," Anakin shouted. "None of you understand." His eyes were wild, his breathing heavy. Obi-Wan remained calm, but his heart sank. He had never seen Anakin like this before. That night, Obi-Wan spoke to the council again. "There is a shadow growing inside him," he said. "But it is not the dark side. It is fear. A fear so deep that it is consuming who he is." The council listened, but not all were present. With the war spreading across dozens of systems, many Jedi were far from Coruscant, leading their clones in desperate campaigns. The Separatists had grown bolder, attacking civilian populations and supply routes. Every Jedi was needed. Every clone was on a mission. It was chaos, and the Council could barely hold itself together. Anakin's fall could not have come at a worse time, and so the seeds were planted. The Republic depended on the clones. The Jedi relied on the Force. And Anakin, he clung to a hope that no one could offer. The hope of changing the future, of stopping the nightmare. But with every step, he drifted further away. Not just from the Jedi, not just from Obi-Wan, but from himself. One day, Anakin walked silently through the corridors of the Chancellor's palace. The imposing architecture, bathed in the artificial light of Coruscant, no longer impressed him. He had been summoned again by Palpatine, but his heart no longer knew whom to trust. The nightmares were becoming visions. The visions became suspicions. And now anguish was a constant weight. What if I am really responsible? He thought. What if the monster I see is who I am becoming? Palpatine awaited him in his chambers. His calm and gentle voice welcomed him as always. Anakin, my young friend, It is becoming increasingly clear that the Jedi Council fears your power. Anakin remained silent. The Chancellor continued. You sought them out, trusted them, and yet they denied you, rejected you. But there are things you do not yet understand. The war, the clones, the creation of all this, none of it was by chance. Anakin stared at him, eyes half closed. What are you talking about? I speak of the truth, my boy. Palpatine approached, his steps slow, his voice firm. I am responsible for the rise of the Republic. I orchestrated the events that brought us here. I am the one who knows the secrets the Jedi fear most. Through wisdom, no, but through sheer ignorance. I am the one who can show you what the Order fears. I can offer you unlimited power, and most importantly, the power to save Padme from death. A deadly silence filled the room. Are you the Sith Lord? Anakin whispered. Palpatine leaned forward. You need not fear your visions. Together we can change destiny. We can prevent death. But Anakin backed away. His tear-filled eyes now flashed with anger. I see myself killing her. His hand trembled. What if you're the one leading me to this? What if this is what you've wanted all along? The lightsaber ignited with a vibrant crackle. You lie! And with a swift leap, he lunged forward. The blue saber cut through the air with fury. Palpatine smiled. His own eyes glowed yellow, and his blood-red saber appeared almost invisibly, blocking the blow with ease. The fight was fierce. Anakin was as quick as lightning, his movements unpredictable and impulsive. He struck with the weight of his emotions, channeling fear, anger, and love for Padme. But Palpatine was like an ancient, cruel rock, unshakable, experienced, and patient. With each attack from Anakin, the Chancellor responded with frightening coldness. Force lightning exploded and damaged the walls of the Chancellor's room, until, with a powerful gesture, Palpatine threw Anakin into the air. You were a fool and did not listen to me, Skywalker. You could have had everything and more. Anakin's body flew through the windows at the top of the Chancellor's chambers and fell in free fall. It was countless meters. Only the Force cushioned the impact and kept his heart beating. When they found his body, he was unconscious, breathing with difficulty. His eyes closed and his face covered in blood. Palpatine, his robe carefully adjusted and his face intact, descended under escort. He tried to kill me, he told the guards. A desperate act, manipulated by the Jedi. Hours later, the Galactic Senate was summoned to an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense. Holoprojectors showed the Chancellor's solemn face throughout the plenary. Jedi, senators, planetary representatives, and influential figures waited. Palpatine began in a grave tone. Anakin Skywalker invaded my chambers. He came with a dark and confused look. He tried to kill me and, in the process, confessed that he was sent by the Jedi, by the Guardians of Peace themselves. The silence was broken by murmurs. Mace Windu stood up immediately. Absurd lie, he shouted. Anakin never received such a mission. We would never order a political assassination. Palpatine stared at him with disdain. Then how do you explain his presence in my chambers, lightsaber in hand? How do you explain his sudden fall from the window, as if trying to cover his tracks? He said it himself. They sent me. They said you were the enemy. Faces turned to the Jedi Council with uncertainty. Palpatine continued. He destroyed the windows and walls with his own saber, and then he jumped as if he were fleeing. But I know the truth. I know he was a good boy, but he was manipulated. He wasn't acting on his own. He was a pawn. He said the Jedi wanted to accumulate more power, and that's why they needed to kill me. The Jedi looked at each other. Indignant, Ki-Adi-Mundi raised his voice. If there is anyone here who has concentrated too much power, it is the Chancellor himself. You hold emergency powers beyond what is necessary. Your tenure already exceeds any acceptable limit. But Palpatine replied without hesitation. And thanks to those powers, this republic still stands. Is that what bothers you? That the people see in me what you are no longer? Trustworthy leaders. The Senate was divided. Some senators, especially those from worlds that had been protected by the clones, applauded Palpatine. Others, such as Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, were visibly uncomfortable. "This doesn't smell right," Bail whispered, but most preferred to remain silent. The war was far from over, and faced with the word of a Chancellor and that of a Jedi in a coma, the doubt was cruel. Anakin was unconscious, and his silence was now a weapon against himself. The session ended under tension, but many more would follow. The image of Anakin, unconscious, being carried by Republic medics, flashed across the screens as Palpatine closed with a cold sentence. "This young Jedi almost destroyed hope, but we can still save the galaxy." Padme had spent every hour at Anakin's side since he was found unconscious. Even in a coma, she spoke to him as if he could hear her. His eyes did not open, but his chest rose and fell, confirming that he was still alive. Hours later, a Jedi ship landed on Coruscant. ObiWan disembarked. He brought with him dust from 1,000 worlds and the weight of 1,000 worries. He went straight to the medical ward where Anakin was hospitalized. He walked through corridors filled with soldiers, doctors, and rumors. When he reached the door of the room, he hesitated for a second. He took a deep breath. Then he entered. There was his former apprentice, the warrior, the friend, the brother, now lying motionless among machines that were trying to keep him alive. And at his side was Padme, so distressed and tearful that she was practically unrecognizable. He asked Padme if she knew of anything unusual before the incident. Crying, she recounted what had happened since his fall. She also recalled some conversations they had had in recent days. She said he seemed strange, disturbed, as if he were fighting something inside himself. She said the last time she saw him was when he said he was going to visit the Chancellor. ObiWan listened silently. This sparked a strong suspicion in him about Chancellor Palpatine. Something didn't make sense. Why would Anakin, a loyal and talented Jedi, try to kill the Chancellor without telling anyone? And why did the Chancellor seem so prepared when he accused the entire Jedi Order? ObiWan decided to act cautiously. He didn't tell the Jedi Council anything. If Palpatine was really behind everything, one wrong move could mean the end of the Order. As the Senate meetings became increasingly tense, ObiWan sneaked into the Chancellor's chambers, looking for clues. But he was racing against time because if everything went as the Chancellor had planned, that would be the day of his victory. Palpatine was using Anakin's attack as justification to consolidate even more power. He requested emergency powers, control over the justice system, and authority over the armies. He called the Jedi public traitors. ObiWan needed proof. He searched through secret files, codes, and devices hidden in the place where Anakin had fallen. That's when he found something strange. An encrypted message, programmed to be sent automatically. The title caught his attention, Order 66. The message was scheduled to be sent in less than an hour. ObiWan froze for a moment. Without wasting any time, he ran to a secure terminal. Using his Jedi Master access, he tried to discover the contents of the message. The investigation led him to communicate with the aliens of Kamino, the planet where the clones were created. There, the records were clear. Each clone was implanted with a series of secret orders, created for extreme situations. There were 150 orders recorded. ObiWan read them one by one until he found Order 66. He was shocked by what he saw. In the event of betrayal of the Republic by the Jedi, all clones must immediately hunt down and exterminate all members of the Jedi Order. The plan had been in place for years. The coup had been in the works since the beginning of the Clone Wars. Desperate, ObiWan tried to disable the message. But the codes were embedded in the Senate's most secure systems. Palpatine had planned everything so that no one could stop him. ObiWan, however, managed to use some of his intelligence to fragment the message. The complete transmission was compromised. Some files were corrupted. Others were sent partially. This would buy some time, but it would not completely prevent disaster. As Order 66 was released, some transmissions reached the clone commanders incomplete. Commander Cody received a strange message, with static and noise. Amid the confusion, He quickly saw Palpatine's face saying one word with an echo. Extermination, Jedi. Extermination, Empire. The screen flickered, and the transmission failed. Cody was paralyzed. Other soldiers also received similar messages. Something was wrong. Some clones did not know how to react. They had been trained to obey, but the message was incomplete. Others who received the message in full began to act against the Jedi. The first reports of attacks came from distant planets. But on Coruscant, because of the transmission failure, nothing happened immediately. ObiWan knew that time was short. He ran back to the other Jedi to alert the Masters, bringing all this evidence with him. Meanwhile, the Senate remained tense. Palpatine spoke with a firm voice, presenting himself as the only figure capable of maintaining order. ObiWan arrived in time to alert Mace Windu and Yoda. He showed them the corrupted files, the name of the order, the possible plan. He said that the transmissions had been damaged, but that the danger was real. They understood that time was running out. While they discussed the next step, Padme remained at Anakin's side, unaware of anything. The Senate was shouting and arguing. Obi-Wan Kenobi, with steady steps and a serious expression, climbed onto the central platform. Senators, I bring you grave evidence. Chancellor Palpatine has lied. He has manipulated recent events and set in motion an ancient plan to destroy the Jedi Order. A buzz filled the room. Here are the holocrons I found in his quarters. He projected images in the center of the chamber. Voices echoed in astonishment. These are real recordings, someone exclaimed. The mood began to change. These files show the creation of secret orders inserted into the mind of every clone trooper. Obi-Wan pointed to an excerpt, Order 66. If the Jedi become a threat, they must be eliminated immediately. Several senators exchanged frightened glances. That's absurd, Mon Mothma murmured. But Bail Organa stood up. No, that explains everything. Palpatine remained silent, just watching. But one senator turned to him. Chancellor, did you know about this? Another raised his voice. Why do these orders exist? And why in your name? Obi-Wan added. And why was the message scheduled to be sent without consulting the Senate earlier today? Palpatine took a deep breath, rose slowly, and smiled. Lies from the Jedi, trying to save their reputation after failing to protect me. To protect us all. But half the senators could no longer believe his words. The mood had changed. Bail Organa stared at Palpatine. Anakin Skywalker would never attack you without reason. He was upset because he discovered something. Maybe he tried to stop you. Master Obi-Wan spoke of the conversations and calls and even gifts that the Chancellor had sent to Anakin in recent months in an attempt to seek his support. Anakin had direct access to you, Palpatine. If there were secrets, he was the only Jedi who could discover them. Another senator added. And why would the Jedi be traitors just when we are so close to winning the war with the help of the clones? Palpatine began to sweat. This is all a trap, he shouted. But no one else was listening. Then an emergency message was displayed. Some surviving Jedi appeared on screen telling how the clones had suddenly gone mad and attacked them a few moments ago. Seeing this, the vast majority of the Galactic Senate was shocked, but they turned their attention back to the Chancellor. A chorus of boos and people shouting "Murderer!" began to echo in the Senate, and Palpatine realized he had to do something. Senators, said Obi-Wan. Anakin said he heard strange things from the Chancellor, ancient stories about the Sith. He didn't have time to tell everything. And then he fell from the top of the building after the fight with Palpatine himself. Bail stood up. I propose an immediate vote to remove the Chancellor's powers. The audience was divided, but the voices spoke, and the votes indicated Palpatine's arrest. The Chancellor backed away, his eyes red with rage. He gave a signal, and that's when his supporters, hidden among the seats, sprang into action. In a synchronized movement, for men opened their robes and revealed bombs attached to their belts. They shouted, and the explosions began. Smoke, screams, chaos. The floor shook and some platforms collapsed. Palpatine took advantage of the confusion to escape through the hidden corridors of the Senate. Obi-Wan tried to follow, coughing from the smoke. Guards helped injured senators. It was a final blow to try to silence everything. But this time, the damage to the Sith's plan was done. Hours later, press holovideos showed the escape. Headlines flashed, "Former Chancellor wanted by the Republic." Discoveries reveal ancient plan for Jedi genocide. Senate elects new emergency leader. Bail Organa was chosen to lead while everything was reorganized. In his first act, he declared, "All clone troops are suspended from immediate action. A new investigation will be conducted. Palpatine will be captured, and the truth will be revealed." The galaxy was watching. Bail sent ships to various regions of the galaxy where the Jedi had been attacked. Several generals began to report the strange behavior of the clones. Yoda was one of those who survived the possible attack by the clones. The Republic was now fighting against its own shadow. Meanwhile, in secret, Palpatine was plotting his next move. He knew he no longer had the Senate or the army, but he still had the Force and one last trump card. If Skywalker wakes up, all will be lost, and they will discover me as Sidious, he growled in a dark hideout. With his hood covering his face and his red lightsaber in hand, Palpatine boarded a small ship and departed. His destination, the hospital where Anakin was staying. He walked silently through the cold, dimly lit corridors. No guards seemed to notice him, but those who did were quickly killed by the Force that Palpatine used on them silently and brutally. He arrived at Anakin's room. Inside, Padme slept sitting next to the bed, holding her beloved's hand. Palpatine approached, but she woke up at that moment and asked what he was doing there. Palpatine asked if she knew the news, and she paused for a second. She tried to buy time by saying she didn't know the news. That's when she pulled out her blaster and fired 3 shots at the Chancellor. But Palpatine used the Force, and one of the furniture machines was raised to protect him from the shots. Then the Chancellor raised his hand and threw Padme against the wall using the Force. Padme screamed, trapped in the air, suffocating. Palpatine walked slowly toward Anakin. "You were the chosen one, and you betrayed me." A red lightsaber ignited in his hand. He raised the blade above his head. It was at that moment that Obi-Wan entered the room, panting. He saw Padme against the wall, her face red with pain. And he saw Palpatine about to decapitate his comatose friend with his blood-red lightsaber. "No!" he shouted. The final battle was about to begin. Obi-Wan reached out with force and threw Palpatine against the bedroom wall. The impact broke part of the metal cladding, but caused the Chancellor's control to give way. Padme fell to the floor coughing, but she was alive. Obi-Wan rushed to her quickly. "Stay with Anakin. I'll take care of this," he said, already turning to face the enemy. Palpatine rose with hatred in his eyes. "You don't know what you're doing, Kenobi," he said, activating his red lightsaber again. Without further words, the two masters lunged at each other. The hospital room became a battlefield. Lightsabers clashed in sparks, cutting through parts of the walls and equipment. Obi-Wan spun nimbly, using defensive moves and quick counterattacks. Palpatine, on the other hand, attacked with fury, using violent jumps and unexpected lunges. It was clear that he mastered the technique with ferocity. The fight continued intensely. Obi-Wan tried to push him out of the room, but Palpatine dodged with ease. "You foolish Jedi never realized. The Sith Lord has always been among you," he shouted, almost hitting Obi-Wan with his power rays. But Obi-Wan used his saber to absorb them. The impact was strong, but he got up. Palpatine advanced again, spinning his lightsaber like a hurricane. In one of these movements, he accidentally hit the monitors connected to Anakin's body, and Obi-Wan feared that this could affect Anakin. But the Chancellor took advantage of the Jedi Master's fear to provoke him even more. The lights on the devices exploded in sparks. The noise was loud, and the doctors, droids, and other patients in the hospital began to flee the commotion. But Palpatine did not notice that Anakin was beginning to move. Still weak, his eyes slowly opened. He looked to the side and saw Padme shooting with a gun in her hand while defending her husband from surprise attacks. Then he saw his former master fighting the man he once called his friend. Anakin saw that the Chancellor was gaining the upper hand. Obi-Wan had two people to protect, and the Sith was taking advantage of that. With each attack, Palpatine seemed to get closer and closer to victory. Obi-Wan often had to throw himself to the ground or kneel down to avoid losing his head. The Chancellor had him right where he wanted him. It was only a matter of time before Obi-Wan Kenobi fell. Then, with some difficulty, Anakin raised his trembling hand and concentrated all his energy. Palpatine was about to deliver the final blow to Obi-Wan when he was thrown violently against the wall. It was the Force pushing him unexpectedly. He turned, confused, trying to understand what had happened, and realized that it had been an effort by Anakin, who had awakened. It was at that moment that Obi-Wan saw his opportunity. With a quick leap, he swung his lightsaber and cut Palpatine's body in half. The Sith Lord's scream echoed through the hospital before he fell lifeless to the floor. Silence filled the room. Obi-Wan lowered his lightsaber, panting. He ran to Anakin and Padme, who was still breathing heavily. "You're back. You saved us," said Obi-Wan. Padme approached and hugged her husband with tears in her eyes. "Everything is fine now. It's over." The hospital lights began to flicker, and the sounds of approaching Republic ships could be heard through the windows. A few days later, the Jedi presented the Senate with the holocron records and recordings of the final battle. Anakin recounted the things he had heard directly from Palpatine and what had led to his downfall. It was proven that Palpatine was the Sith Lord Sidious. All Republic clones were collected and reprogrammed, removing Order 66 from their chips. Confidence in the Republic was gradually restored. Anakin, with Padme's support, recovered from his injuries and vowed to dedicate his life to protecting the galaxy.